Good morning. Thank you for joining me. Merci. I would like to begin today by acknowledging that we are gathered on the traditional unceded territory of the Huron-Wendat, Haudenosaunee, and Anishinaabeg, and the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. Today and every day, we reaffirm our commitment to meaningful reconciliation and respectful partnership with Indigenous peoples. Putin's ongoing, illegal, and unjustified full-scale invasion of Ukraine is coming at a massive cost to ordinary people, to Ukraine's economy, and to global stability. And it is a direct attack on the rules-based international order that has enabled peace, stability, and prosperity in Europe for decades. Nobody understands the immense cost of this war better than our Ukrainian friends. Et pourtant, malgré ce coup, ils persévèrent et continuent de lutter pour leur pays, leur liberté et les démocraties du monde entier. Nous avons été témoins de cette détermination à chaque jour depuis l'invasion à grande échelle amorcée par Poutine le 24 février dernier. Le Canada maintient fermement son soutien envers l'Ukraine et nous continuons de fournir au pays une aide forte sur le plan humanitaire, économique et militaire. When we paused our military training and capacity building operations in Ukraine under Operation Unifier, in early February, I made a commitment to resume these operations whenever and wherever possible. Since then, we have been supplying lethal and non-lethal military equipment to the armed forces of Ukraine, and our Canadian armed forces have provided training on the use of the artillery and munitions, such as the M777s, in third country locations. Today, I will discuss three important developments: training, update on military aid, and cooperation with allies. First, training. We have now entered a new and very dangerous phase of this conflict, with Putin engaging in protracted attempts to inflict long-term damage on Ukraine and its people. Canada is committed to supporting Ukraine's short, medium, and long-term defense needs. I am therefore announcing today that we are fulfilling our promise to resume large-scale training under Operation Unifier. I have authorized the deployment of up to 225 Canadian Armed Forces personnel to the United Kingdom, where they will train new Ukrainian military recruits. Aujourd'hui, j'annonce que nous tenons notre promesse de reprendre l'opération Unifier et que j'ai autorisé le déploiement d'un maximum de 225 membres des forces armées canadiennes au Royaume-Uni, où ils formeront de nouvelles recrues militaires ukrainiennes. Effective August 25th, the majority of our deployed Canadian Armed Forces will work as trainers, supported by a command and control element at a military base in southeast England. The first cohort of CAF personnel will depart from Edmonton, Alberta, starting next week. Ces cours menés par les Canadiens offrent un programme flexible axé sur les compétences individuelles requises aux fins du combat de première ligne, notamment la manipulation d'armes, les premiers soins sur le champ de bataille, les techniques de campagne, les tactiques de patrouille et le droit des conflits armés. Depuis 2015, dans le cadre de l'opération Unifier, nous avons eu le privilège de former plus de 33 000 militaires et membres de personnel de sécurité ukrainien. Lorsque j'étais en Ukraine, plus tôt cette année, j'ai vu à quel point nos membres des forces armées canadiennes ont travaillé fort pour livrer l'instruction dont les forces militaires ukrainiennes avaient besoin pour se préparer en vue de ce combat. Et j'ai directement entendu des membres des forces armées canadiennes qui aussi ont beaucoup appris de leurs collègues ukrainiens. Nous savons que cet échange de connaissances entre nos deux forces militaires a nettement amélioré les choses sur le terrain, en particulier dans la défense de Kiev durant les premières semaines qui ont suivi l'invasion. De plus, nous sommes heureux de maintenir notre soutien envers l'Ukraine à cet égard grâce à l'annonce d'aujourd'hui. Indeed, General Eyre shared that when he met last week with the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, General Zaluzhny, reiterated how much Ukrainians valued Canada's powerful training mission. I have also been in touch with Defense Minister Reznikov, including today, who thanked me for Canada's continued support for Ukraine's security, sovereignty, and stability. On behalf of Canada, I want to thank the United Kingdom and my counterpart, Secretary Wallace, for leading this initiative and for providing the facilities needed to resume training. I also salute the remarkable courage and bravery of the armed forces of Ukraine in these most difficult circumstances. Moving now to update on military aid to Ukraine. Our commitment to Ukraine and to Canadians watching this at home is that we will continue to provide Ukraine not only with the skills to defend their country, but also with the equipment necessary to do so. Through our own stocks and inventory, we have provided anti-tank weapon systems and ammunition, hand grenades, M777s, artillery guns, and small arms to Ukraine over the last number of months. To bolster Ukraine's defense, we have also been procuring military aid through Canadian industry, including 56 drones, 8 Rochelle vehicles, demining equipment, and satellite imagery. In addition, at the NATO's Leaders Summit, the Prime Minister and I announced that Canada was working to finalize an agreement with GDLS to supply 39 armored combat support vehicles. And today, I am pleased to confirm that an agreement has been achieved with the company and that these vehicles will be delivered straight off the assembly line to address some of Ukraine's most pressing battlefield needs. The company has informed us that the deliveries to Europe of the first vehicles will begin in the coming weeks. Working in close partnership with the Ukrainian Armed Forces and with Defense Minister Reznikov, we are also equipping these vehicles with additional modern, state-of-the-art armor and machine guns, as well as ammunition for these machine guns. Moving now to cooperation with our allies, our Canadian Armed Forces have also helped our NATO allies deliver over 3 million pounds of military aid and military equipment from our allies since February in support of Ukraine. And we continue to work with domestic partners to identify specific defense industry niches where Canada has a competitive advantage that could continue supporting Ukraine in the long term. Par ailleurs, le Canada consolide ses engagements axés sur la défense collective de l'OTAN en Europe, par exemple par l'intermédiaire de la force opérationnelle aérienne en Roumanie. Nos forces armées canadiennes vont surveiller l'espace aérien roumain et alliés, vont s'entraîner avec leurs homologues sur l'OTAN et au besoin vont intercepter, identifier ou escorter les aéronefs qui entrent dans la zone d'identification de défense aérienne roumaine. Aujourd'hui, la force opérationnelle aérienne en Roumanie a assumé ses fonctions de police aérienne renforcée de l'OTAN aux côtés de la force aérienne roumaine et d'autres alliés. Dans le contexte de l'environnement de sécurité mondiale qui évolue considérablement, nous renforçons désormais notre soutien et avons déployé temporairement 2 aéronefs CF-18 additionnels, outre la rotation de 6 aéronefs que nous continuons de fournir aux fins d'activités simultanées d'entraînement de l'OTAN. In short, Canada is taking an all-hands-on-deck approach in our support for Ukraine and in defense of the rules-based international order. Our support will not waver. In conclusion, our adversaries are watching us closely, eager to see cracks in our solidarity, hoping for signs of disunity. And they may think that the NATO alliance can be divided, but we are more united than ever in our support of Ukraine. The resumption of Operation Unifier is just one more example of this support. Thank you. Merci. I'm happy to take your questions.
Thank you, Minister. Merci, Madame la Ministre. On va commencer maintenant avec la période des questions. We'll have one question and one follow-up from journalists calling in. On peut commencer maintenant avec la première question.
Thank you, merci. Please press star 1 at this time if you have a question. S'il vous plaît, appuyez sur étoile 1 maintenant pour poser une question. Et la première question, the first question is from Lee Berthiaume, the Canadian Press. Please go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Minister. I wanted to ask about I lost my train of thought there. Just about the deployment, and obviously the Canadian Forces is very stretched now. We have a number of commitments all over the place. We've also seen what's happening in China, and I'm just wondering about the state of the forces in terms of its ability to provide such a large commitment, and also kind of on the flip side, why it's only for 4 months.
Thank you for the question, Lee. Training missions like this, assisting our allies and our partners when they are under attack, is what we do. It is one of the main purposes of the Canadian Armed Forces. It supports our collective security, our multilateral alliances, and in fact, the rules-based international order. It is fundamentally important to the Canadian Armed Forces and to our collective security. And it is a priority for us as a country to stand shoulder to shoulder with Ukraine and with our allies.
As a follow-up, you mentioned the agreement with GDLS and the provision of armored vehicles. We've sent a lot of equipment over there. Can you speak to how Canada is tracking this equipment and making sure it doesn't end up either on the black market or being used for purposes other than it's intended?
So, you're right that we have sent multiple shipments of military aid to Ukraine. That has included Carl Gustaf anti-tank weapon systems, hand grenades, artillery, ammunition, sniper rifles, and then we moved to working with industry, so cameras for drones, the 8 Rochelle vehicles, and now moving forward the 39 vehicles from GDLS. So you're right to point to a substantial amount of military aid, which represents our continued commitment to Ukraine in its fight for stability and sovereignty. In terms of weapons tracking, that is something that we take seriously, of course, and what we will continue to do is work with the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine and the armed forces of Ukraine to ensure that this aid is provided exclusively to them. And we are following the requirements of the United Nations Arms Trade Treaty, to which Canada is a party. I discussed this very issue with Minister Resnikov when I met with him at the end of January in Kyiv, recognizing that it is an important issue for Canada and for Canadians. Canada is not taking specific part in the discussions regarding the development of a tracking system at the current time, but we are monitoring the developments, and we will leave no stone unturned in our work to ensure the safe delivery and the use of military aid.
Next question. Prochaine question.
Thank you. La question suivante. The next question is from Kevin Gallagher, CTV National News. Please go ahead.
Morning, Minister. Thanks for taking our questions. Ukraine's ambassador to Canada is expected to again express disappointment from Ukraine about Canada's decision to waive the sanctions on the turbines. So I guess my question to you is, although Ukraine has been asking for Canada to train its troops, it's also disappointed about Canada indirectly helping Russia fund this war. So what do you say to your Ukrainian allies today, about this kind of disconnect and I guess solidarity?
Well, I'd like to start off by saying, Kevin, that I have been in touch with Minister Resnikov this morning, and we continue to stand in solidarity with Ukraine and with our counterparts in the Ukrainian government. And they recognize that we stand with Ukraine shoulder to shoulder, full stop. We will continue to impose severe costs on the Russian regime in response to Putin's illegal and unprovoked war against Ukraine. At the same time, it is important for us to support our European friends and allies as they work to end their dependency on Russian gas imports as quickly as possible. Canada is going to continue to work to stabilize energy markets and to develop long-term and sustainable solutions on energy supplies.
Follow-up question?
Back to the training mission in UK. How long is it going to last, and how many Ukrainian soldiers will this train? I guess maybe to specify, no foreign nationals will be trained. Is it only Ukrainian nationals who are being trained at this camp by UK and Canadian servicemen and women?
This training mission is for Ukrainian military new recruits, and Canada's contribution is going to be extensive, up to 225 Canadian Armed Forces personnel to engage in training as well as to assist with logistics. The activities of our Canadian Armed Forces are going to be relating to frontline combat, weapons handling, first aid, fieldcraft, patrol tactics, and include the law of armed conflict, which is a mandatory course in the training session. So this is a very important mission for us. In fact, I spoke with Secretary Ben Wallace, at the NATO meeting of the defense ministers in June about it. I spoke about it again with him in Madrid and expressed our willingness to continue to work with our allies in support of Ukraine and the training mission that the UK is setting up. And I'll just say that, as I'm sure you know, Canada has trained since 2015 over 33,000 members of the Ukrainian armed forces. So our resumption of large-scale training under Operation Unifier is an extension of a long-term commitment that we've already made to training of the Ukrainian armed forces. And it is certainly a sign of our enduring commitment to our allies as well as to the longevity of Ukraine itself. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go with the next question, please. Prochaine question.
Merci. La question suivante. The next question is from Ashley Burke, CBC News. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon, Minister Anand. Could Canada joining this British-led mission further inflame the international situation?
Canada is focused on assisting Ukraine in its time of need. And that is why our military aid over the last number of months since February 24th, and indeed before the further invasion, has been so extensive. So that is our focus. We need to stand with Ukraine in the short and the long term in order to assist in protecting its sovereignty and its stability. And today's announcement of up to 225 Canadian Armed Forces members being deployed for training in the UK is a further example of the way in which we take this objective extremely seriously in protection of Ukraine and in support of the international rules-based order, which has kept us all safe since the end of the Second World War.
Follow-up question?
And when it comes to timing, Ukraine's government has repeatedly pushed for Canada to restart the training in a third country. Why not do this earlier? What has changed now?
Actually, the reality is that we have been very consistent in offering whatever support we can from a military perspective to Ukraine. Let me give you another example. When we donated the M777s, we also began training Ukrainian forces on the use of the M777s in a third country. And our niche area of expertise in training is well recognized around the world. Jens Stoltenberg, for example, has repeatedly mentioned it to me and publicly how important Canada's role has been in training. So I see a continuum, in fact, of various types of aid that Canada is putting on the table, be it from CAF inventory, be it from procurements from Canadian industry in areas of expertise such as cameras for drones or in armored vehicles, and now be it from large-scale training missions, which we clearly have expertise in doing and which the Canadian Armed Forces are very much looking forward to participating in.
Merci. Thank you, Minister. On va passer à la prochaine question, peut-être en français.
Merci. The next question, la question suivante est de Laurence Martin de Radio-Canada. La parole est à vous.
Oui, bonjour, Madame la Ministre. C'est pas un peu hypocrite de dire on soutient l'Ukraine, on est de tout cœur avec le pays, qu'on n'est même pas capable de respecter nos propres sanctions contre la Russie?
Est-ce que c'est une question sur les sanctions ou l'aide militaire?
Et en fait, c'est que vous annoncez aujourd'hui un déploiement militaire pour aider l'armée ukrainienne.
Oui.
Vous dites on est de tout cœur avec l'Ukraine, mais en même temps, il y a quelques jours, vous avez renvoyé des turbines en Allemagne et du même coup, on a violé nos propres sanctions contre la Russie. Beaucoup de membres de la communauté ukrainienne reprochent au Canada justement d'avoir violé ses propres sanctions et de ne pas soutenir complètement l'Ukraine. Donc, est-ce que notre attitude n'est pas un peu hypocrite dans tout ça?
Oui, bien sûr.
Contradictoire.
Oui. C'est important de se souvenir que, comme gouvernement du Canada, nous avons beaucoup de types d'aides pour appuyer l'Ukraine à ce moment. Je parle aujourd'hui d'aide militaire. Mes collègues dans le gouvernement du Canada, bien sûr, ont parlé au sujet de l'aide économique, humanitaire, l'aide pour la situation alimentaire aussi. Donc, nous devons continuer d'appuyer l'Ukraine. Et ça, c'est la raison pour je suis ici aujourd'hui. Et nous allons continuer de faire ça dans tous les domaines.
Et une question de...
Je m'excuse, OK.
Mais vous ne voyez pas une contradiction dans ce que vous annoncez aujourd'hui, que le fait qu'on ait envoyé des turbines qui sont essentielles au fonctionnement d'un gazoduc?
C'est important de reconnaître que nous sommes solidaires de l'Ukraine, point final, et aussi de continuer à soutenir nos amis et alliés européens dans leur effort de mettre en place rapidement, aussitôt que possible, les mécaniques, les effets de gaz russe. Parce que c'est important pour le Canada d'aider nos alliés, de stabiliser les marchés de l'énergie. Et ça c'est important pour nous et nos alliés aussi. Donc, c'est une balance ici. Nous devons continuer d'appuyer l'Ukraine et aussi, en même temps, d'être solidaires avec nos alliés européens.
And we'll take another question, please.
Thank you. Merci. La question suivante. The next question is from David Pugleys, the Ottawa Citizen. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Canada's been in discussions with South Korea over the potential purchase of 100,000 rounds of artillery ammunition. I was wondering where you're at with that and if that deal is going to be signed and sealed so the ammunition could be sent to Ukraine.
I'll begin by saying that, perhaps as is evidenced today from my remarks already, that we are continuing to put whatever we can on the table for Ukraine, whether it's from the inventory and stocks of the Canadian Armed Forces, whether it is through our relationships and requests of Canadian industry, which they have very much risen to assist us with, or whether it is coordinating with our allies through the Defense Contact Group, for example, which has been set up by Secretary Austin of the United States. So we are very comprehensive in the work that we are doing in terms of military aid and equipment for Ukraine. On the specific subject of additional procurements, we are certainly in communication with a number of suppliers. We are also in touch with Minister Resnikov to identify what Ukraine's immediate and most pressing needs are. And I want to say that our contributions of military aid have directly lined up with the specific requests that Minister Resnikov has made of me directly and us as a country. And we will continue to do whatever we can to stand shoulder to shoulder with Ukraine. And as I said, we are in touch with multiple suppliers in that vein.
And a follow-up question, please.
So are you going to proceed with the South Korean deal, yes or no?
Actually, it would be imprudent for me to announce any transaction before it is finalized. It is not my style, and I will make sure that I have all the T's crossed and I's dotted before anything is announced, and that includes the question that you are posing to me right now.
Thank you. And one final question and follow-up, please.
Thank you. Merci. The last question, la dernière question, elle est Étienne Lajoie, Le Devoir. La parole est à vous.
Oui, bonjour, Madame la ministre. Dans une chronique dans le New York Times le 1er août, le chroniqueur Thomas Friedman écrit, je cite, U.S. officials are a lot more concerned about Ukraine's leadership than they are letting on, and there is deep mistrust between the White House and President Zelensky of Ukraine. En tant que ministre de la Défense, est-ce que vous êtes encore confiante dans le leadership en Ukraine et est-ce qu'il y a encore confiance entre le gouvernement canadien et le président Zelensky?
Oui, j'ai la confiance dans le gouvernement ukrainien, dans le président dans Zelensky et dans mon homologue, le ministre Reznikov, bien sûr.
Et une question de suivi.
En suivi de ce que je comprends, les militaires canadiens seront là environ 4 mois en Ukraine. Est-ce que c'est assez long pour former des personnes qui n'ont aucune expérience? De ce que je disais dans les médias britanniques, il y a certains recrues qui seront là sur en formation qui n'ont jamais touché à une arme. Est-ce que c'est suffisant, 4 mois, pour former des personnes qui n'ont jamais manié une arme?
Oui, je pense que oui. C'est très important de reconnaître que nous sommes et nos alliés sont des experts avec la formation. On doit se souvenir que nous avons déjà entraîné plus de 33 000 soldats ukrainiens. Donc, nous allons continuer avec l'entraînement comme ça, avec la formation, et nous allons donner 100% avec cette mission. Et si on doit évoluer l'entraînement, nous devons le faire, bien sûr, mais c'est important de reconnaître que ça, c'est un effort pas seulement avec le Canada, il y a d'autres pays aussi, le Danemark par exemple, le Nouvelle-Zélande par exemple, et comme pays, comme partenaire, on doit continuer d'évaluer comment est-ce que nous pouvons améliorer l'entraînement. Mais à ce moment, nous avons l'expertise et nous donnons cette expertise dans les sessions d'entraînement. Merci.
Merci, Madame la Ministre. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. This concludes today's press conference. Merci et bonne journée.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you.
Thank you. Merci. The conference has now ended. La conférence est maintenant terminée. Please disconnect your line.